No one is scared of the unknown. You can't be scared of the unknown. What you're scared of is what your brain is superimposing as a prediction, as a imagined outcome in the unknown. You're full of shit, and if you want me to really help you, then you've got to realize that the words coming out of your mouth right now are disempowering and a disservice to what you say you want. And I'm a stand for what you want, not you pretending you can't have it. I really would love to fulfill on this business opportunity, but then why have I sabotaged it? Well, because at the deepest level, I think that I'm worthless. Well, what are you really committed to? Are you committed to being right, or are you committed to being free and happy? Life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free. Wherever there is fear, there is the opportunity for growth.
What are you afraid of right now?
Ja, grüezi meine Freunde und willkommen zurück bei The Chainless Life, deinem Podcast für Bildung, die befreit. Und heute sprechen wir mit Crone, dem Mind-Architekt. Und bevor ich jetzt heute über Peter ein bisschen was erzähle, möchte ich dich nochmal darauf hinweisen, dass das hier wieder mal eine englische Episode ist. Und vielleicht hast du es gemerkt, dass ich in den letzten Monaten vermehrt mal wieder englische Gäste eingeladen habe. Und das hat einen ganz bestimmten Grund. Ich persönlich muss sagen, es gibt auf dieser Welt so viele unglaublich geile Menschen, die so viel zu erzählen haben, die so viel wissen, dass ich mich einfach nicht mehr mit The Chainless Life nur noch auf den deutschen Markt beschränken wollte. Und deswegen wollte ich meinen eigenen Podcast hier befreien von dieser Limitierung und hier auch in Zukunft immer mal wieder englische Episoden für dich bereitstellen. Das Schöne an der Sache ist, dass wir jetzt mittlerweile auch in der Lage sind, mit AI deutsche Untertitel für dich zu generieren. Das heißt, wenn du hier bei Spotify oder bei YouTube zuschaust, kannst du, wie ich damals im Alter von 13 Jahren, ziemlich effektiv dein Englisch aufbessern, indem du zuhörst und gleichzeitig die deutschen Untertitel mitliest. So habe ich damals wirklich auch Englisch gelernt. Und gleichzeitig lernst du hier wirklich auch Leute kennen, von denen du bisher vielleicht noch nie was gehört hast, die dich aber auch extrem weiterbringen können. Und zu diesen Gästen gehört auch Crone. Ich habe immer gesagt, wenn ich irgendwann mal in der Lage wäre, einen Podcast mit ihm zu machen, dann wäre er einer meiner absoluten Lieblingsgäste, weil er wirklich mit seiner Coaching-Technik Leute verändert, Leute transformiert, und zwar live vor Ort. Ich habe es selbst vor ein paar Wochen gesehen, habe mich eingeladen zu einem seiner Events. Ich bin sonst nicht so ein Fan von diesen Events, aber er hat das wirklich auf eine Art und Weise gemacht, wo ich sagen kann, hey, er nimmt diesen Humor, er nimmt seine unglaubliche Kompetenz, seine Intelligenz, aber eben auch diese Tough Love, er ist nicht zu nett und gleichzeitig ist er aber eben auch mitfühlend und kann dadurch Menschen wirklich sehr schön begleiten. Ich habe ihn damals kennengelernt durch einen Podcast mit Aubrey Marcus, in dem er ihn ziemlich schnell auch mit ein paar Fragen und mit ein bisschen Präsenz zum Weinen gebracht hat. Und das fand ich sehr eindrücklich, das zu sehen. Und ich würde sagen, von den ganzen Coaches da draußen ist er der mich in den letzten Jahren auch am meisten inspiriert hat, mehr in meine Arbeit zu investieren, da auch noch besser darin zu werden, weil ich einfach immer mehr merke, dass wenn du diese Präsenz in dir verkörperst, du auch entsprechend vielen Menschen alleine mit dieser Präsenz sehr viel Gutes tun kannst. Das heißt, mal abgesehen von irgendwelchen Coaching-Techniken und irgendwelchen möglichen Formeln, wirst du heute in erster Linie mal Crone spüren und merken, was für ihn auf jeden Fall auch die ausschlaggebenden Instrumente sind, um Menschen zu dieser Transformation zu bringen, wie er auch selbst in jungen Jahren seine Eltern verloren hat, was das mit ihm gemacht hat, wie er zu dem Thema Bindung und Beziehungen steht, obwohl er auch selbst sehr stark im buddhistischen Non-Attachment ist und entsprechend auch weiß, dass nichts wirklich sicher ist. Das heißt, wie kombinieren wir Liebe und Commitment mit diesen universellen Gesetzen, dass wir eigentlich nicht wirklich wissen, was als nächstes passiert. Das und vieles mehr, das erfährst du heute. Und wie gesagt, hast du auch die Möglichkeit, dir diese Folge mit deutschen Untertiteln anzuschauen. Deswegen wünsche ich jetzt viel Spaß, viele Learnings und gute Unterhaltung mit The Chainless Life und Crone.
So the first time I heard you talking was on a podcast with Aubrey Marcus, probably like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
And he invited you very casually to just talk about you. But it was ending up, the podcast was ending up that you guys were talking about him and he started to cry. And I was like, wow. And that repeated itself on another podcast I saw with, I think, Eddie Millett or something.
Ed Milet, yep.
Yeah, Ed Mallet. And then I saw it again. You were again with Aubrey and his wife, coaching her through a pretty interesting process about perfectionism, which I really liked. And then eventually I finally saw you live a few weeks ago in LA, and you made everybody cry.
Seems to be a bit of a theme here.
Yeah, there's something. So I would love to just start this conversation with a simple question, and I think the question would be: how did you learn to do what you're doing with the people?
Good question. I don't know if it's something I learned to do with people or really just a perspective that I garnered over time, which was to realize that, by virtue of being human, most people, I was going to say sadly, but we could say it's a beautiful part of being human is, people suffer. People carry a lot of hurt from their past, often childhood. And so I think I'm able to create a space that for most people feels very safe, and that I really provide that unconditional love of seeing somebody, in a way that they don't feel judged, they don't feel criticized. And that then usually, as you've seen, has allowed somebody to process or experience some of the things that maybe they have never felt quite at liberty to allow themselves to feel. So it was through my own process, my own suffering, my own adversity that I got to a place of really profound acceptance. And my main products, as you've probably heard me talk about, and you came to my live event called Finding Freedom, is, helping people find freedom, and freedom from the limitations of their subconscious that create the suffering that holds back the hurt and the tears that, apparently when they're in my presence, they're able to let go of, which is very healing.
Mm-hmm. So let's maybe reframe the question again and ask you, because you already mentioned it, what did you have to go through in your life in order to do what you're doing?
Quite a lot. I mean, it started early in ways that I didn't know it would lead to a career like this. But my mum died of cancer when I was 7 years old. So that was obviously quite traumatic for a young boy, or very traumatic. And I'm not sure I really knew how to process that at the time. And then 10 years later, it was just me and my dad. Obviously, I was an only child, so I didn't have siblings. My dad went to work. He worked on the boats. You obviously being from Germany, the ferries that go between England and Calais and England and Belgium. And he was working on the boats, and one of the boat that he was on, unfortunately, capsized. And so that was a major disaster in the Zeebrugge harbor in Belgium. And so those two events, obviously, my primary care providers were, that was pivotal for me in terms of, first of all, becoming a real survivor. I just had to do whatever I had to do to make it. And then I went through a couple of profound relationships, one in particular when I was around 28, 29, that it really showed me the structure of life, which might be a weird thing to say, but I was unconsciously scared of loss. In hindsight now, it's very obvious why I would be, my parents dying. But when I had this girlfriend, I was very driven by being the perfect boyfriend for her, which isn't far from my nature. I like to be kind and generous and sweet and loving and all the things that hopefully a woman would want. But it had that undercurrent of my own fear of, like, I didn't want to lose her. And so fear fulfills on itself energetically. So of course she left, so that I had to address what it was that I was scared of. And I saw the fear, and that was really the big shift for me. And that's actually when I started my career. I realized that the very nature of life is uncertainty. And yet I was trying to manipulate certainty, right? I was trying to control the situation, which was really the way that the brain is trying to mitigate or avoid the hurt that I still hadn't accepted, right? So that was both healing, challenging, but ultimately profound, and what led to me being able to do what I do today.
Mm-hmm. Were you getting to those realizations, because you're embodying them obviously now? It's not that you're just talking about them because you read in a book about them. What was the concrete process? Did you go through therapy, or did you do vipassanas? Did you do plant medicine? Like, what was the stuff that actually worked?
Yeah, there's a series of things. I mean, I'd read a lot of work like spiritual texts, deep from Krishnamurti, Sri Nisargadatta, these Ramana Maharshis, true gurus that had, I think, created a foundation for me to, as you said, mentally understand. And so
Hmm.
that gave me a nice foundation for me to, even in ways that I was oblivious to in my own conditioning, at least see it in other people. And then when I went through that process, I spoke to a lot of friends, and I don't know what it was. I was literally sitting at a desk in my, at that time, rent control apartment in Santa Monica, and I was having these incessant questions go through my mind of like, where is she? Will I see her again? Is she dating somebody else? And it was really kind of literally keeping me up at night. It was certainly frustrating because it's that part of the mind that is trying to garner security. I want to find reassurance. I'm trying to figure it all out. And so whether you call it dumb luck or divine intervention, or the way that my mind is able to sort of fall back on itself and often answer some of these seemingly unanswerable questions, I realized I got the answer to all of the questions at the same time. Like, where is she? Is she dating someone else? Will I see her again? Which is, I don't know. I don't know. And so it was really the work that I did was establishing the truth. And it was the truth, as they say, that will set you free. And it sure did, because I was amazed at the fact that I hadn't realized that the very nature of life is uncertainty. Because we're so programmed to try and figure it out, whether you're gambling on the stock market or gambling on horses or gambling in your own relationship as to whether you're going to get in trouble with someone, or, it's like this speculation energy that we all have. And that was, for me, the most liberating experience of my life. I realized that not only is the future completely unknown, but by virtue of being human, we're always trying to figure it out, which is futile and exhausting. And so for me, it was the first time in my life that I was totally okay not knowing. And so that was the process. It was just truth that became so self-evident.
Hmm. And did you feel like that led, especially in the terms of relationships, because it sounds like all the hurt you went through were through uncontrollable situations. Obviously, there was your mother, your dad passing, and then the person you loved leaving you. Where I'm so interested in this topic, and I'm curious if you have a perspective, maybe with what you've experienced in the last few years, is that somehow this acknowledgement of the uncertainty through Buddhism, for example, helped me exactly with that fear of the unknown. Like, I'm embracing it. One of my favorite books is The Wisdom of Insecurity by Alan Watts. Love this book. But then there's also this notion of commitment in a relationship. Like, hey, I'm committing to you. We're gonna
Hmm.
do this. I'm gonna marry you. So how do you
Yeah.
feel those two are? Do they compete with each other? Is there like a problem? I don't like you know what I mean? Like, do you feel like
Yeah.
if you really acknowledge that there is nothing certain, you shouldn't even talk about commitment? Or do you feel like there is a way to fully commit in a relationship and still acknowledge the uncertainty that comes with it?
Yeah. It's a beautiful question. And it does seem, at best paradoxical and at worst hypocritical, right? um, Yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen, and yet I'm committed to making it happen, right? Or,
Yeah, exactly.
um, yeah, and where I see it, sort of, for me, just because of all my experience working with some of the greatest performers around the world, where I see that conundrum most at play is with my athletes, professional athletes who are being paid millions of dollars to get an outcome, right? They are definitely committed, and at least if they're not, they have to at least pretend, otherwise they lose their contracts, right? Um, so yeah, when it comes to personal relationships, I think it's a little different, and I think unfortunately most people become disenchanted with relationships because they have had promises, expectations, commitments that didn't work out. Even people who obviously get married, they have kids, and then it still doesn't work out. So I think it's both, right? I think you can make space for both, which is that the nature of life is uncertainty. I certainly didn't know that when I was 17, my dad would go to work one day and never come back, and I'd never see him again. That was obviously very challenging. And yet we could argue that in the context of not knowing, there was still a profound commitment to one another of how much we loved each other. Um, and so I understand the conundrum or the challenge of seemingly this conflict, but I think it's beautiful because it's sort of a human declaration that even in the face of uncertainty, I'm going to do the best I can, right? And so I think if relationships on the romantic level could embody a little bit more of that, of like, hey, look, life is crazy, shit happens, that's the professional psychological term. Um, and yet I am going to do the best I can to be the most loving, doting, respectful, integrous partner I can be. And my commitment to you through the declaration of my own language is that I would like to spend the rest of my life with you. That's when I'm creating a container.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes down to something that I find humans struggle with, which is honoring what you say, right? And we all struggle with that. I obviously fell short with you, and that is something I had to apologize about where we had previously scheduled a podcast, not something I like to do because I teach people about honoring their word. The difference there is I honored my word, I communicated, and dealt with the consequences. Some people get caught in keeping the word, right? And sometimes that can become actually,
Yes.
where they, it's a very subtle thing, right? So I honor my word. I don't necessarily always keep my word because you could look at it that way where it becomes dysfunctional, where people stay in a relationship even though it's unhealthy, dysfunctional, disharmonious, and maybe even at times abusive, but they keep their word or they do it for the kids or whatever the justification is. So in that case, it's like, well, what are you really committed to? Are you committed to being right or are you committed to being free and happy, right? So so I'm not sure I'm fully answering the question, hopefully giving some semblance of, insight, but I think they can coexist, which is ultimately, we are all, excuse my French, fucking clueless. But within that cluelessness, there is the realm of pure ultimate possibility. And so we're going to do the best we can to commit to something, whether that be around my health and getting in shape, whether that be to a career or a business that I want to start, or whether that be to a romantic relationship. And the proof that is in the pudding is the degree to which I can fulfill on what I say I'm going to fulfill on. And that is why I love the word abracadabra, which most people obviously associate with magic and magicians. But the actual Hebrew translation is very powerful, and why I would assert it shows that we're all magical beings, because abracadabra means as I speak, so I create. And so if you really want to be magic and create magic in your life, then as you speak, make sure to create.
Beautiful. Yeah, maybe to go there again, to make it even more subtle, because we were talking right now about all the different things that can happen on the quote unquote outside, like other people can die, they can get sick, they can leave you. But what I've experienced in my own life, I was engaged, and
Mm-hmm.
so I was about to commit to something very beautiful, to marriage, and then my desire changed in a way that I didn't expect it. So now you could say there was something else I was avoiding in that sense. But what I basically just want to say here is, and I think Schopenhauer said that you can do what you want, but you cannot want what you want. And to experience that on my own, basically psyche, that there's something that can just evolve. Sometimes we are really invested in a business, and then all of a sudden we feel the mission is not important to us anymore. Yeah, I was super invested into making natural bodybuilding a big thing. I wanted to promote it, and then all of a sudden I realized natural bodybuilding is actually stupid because it's still unhealthy, and you still have to suffer and put your body into a lot of stress to eventually not win, but actually look better in a subjective way compared to other guys. And then all of a sudden it just left me. So I'm not sure if this is something that I don't see in my life, like a pattern of like, I'm just like at some point letting go of commitment because it gets too hard, or if it's just like also very natural to let go of things, like you said, instead of like holding on to something just because I said this is the thing. Also, just like
Yeah.
acknowledging the nature of things, that just stuff just changes.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and I appreciate you sharing all of that. And I think it's something that a lot of people will be able to relate to in their own life, right? Because I think one of the biggest experiences of disappointment that we all have as humans is that we don't complete something, we don't fulfill on something, we fall short, we don't follow through. And, we could psychoanalyze that all day, and it depends on the individual. There is obviously space for the conversation about people who struggle with commitment. I think it's more subtle. I think there's something beneath that, which is in the realm of self-sabotage, where it's not that somebody doesn't want what they say they want and they're not at some level committed. It's just that their deeper programming of their subconscious doesn't allow them to fulfill on that. So it's a little more subtle, and it sort of warrants a bit more compassion towards ourselves of like, oh, wow, I really would love to fulfill on this business opportunity, start, this venture and this project that I've been passionate about. But then why have I sabotaged it? Well, because at the deepest level, I think that I'm worthless or that I'm not good enough. And so we get to a certain threshold and we kind of get to that outer limits of our constrained self, and the ego won't let you go past that. So it could be well intended. And so there's a certain argument for, yes, the lack of commitment is there, but is it really because you're not a committed human, or is it because you're being driven by deeper conditioning based on how you were raised or the things you heard as a kid? So that's one component. The other component that I think oftentimes gets overlooked is that even the things that people want, that they say they're committed to, oftentimes aren't things they really want, but rather they're things they're pursuing because they think they're supposed to, they should, or that's what their friends or their family or their parents told them they should. And so that equally starts to fall apart because it's built on a pretense, right? It's not authentic. It's where I'm pursuing something because, well, that's what society or my parents told me to, but it's not really my heart's desire or my greatest interest. So that also is going to lose its momentum at some point. So I think the investigation for people to look at is, okay, is what you're pursuing in terms of your desires and your wants and your commitments authentic, like to start with? Because if it's not, you're never going to fulfill on it, unless you're just somebody who's trying to prove a point, make everyone else wrong, and you've just got a lot of willpower. That's great. It's still not very fulfilling.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing, is to really investigate the authenticity of one's desires. Then you can start to, question the validity of your commitment and discipline towards it, right? But if you start something that's based on pretense or as a facade and it's something to do with looking good or your appearance to others, it's always going to lack that, the fire.
Yeah. The whole idea about authenticity is sometimes really hard for me to grasp because it's part of what I'm teaching in my mentorships as well. But I just feel like 10 years ago, I was authentically invested in bodybuilding. That was just like the level
Yeah.
of awareness I've had. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, I wasn't anymore. And now you can say, like, yeah, there was like a drive behind it to prove it to my father or to prove it to the world or to, I don't know, whatever, to feel more worthy. But authenticity, how would you say, like, how can somebody find out if something is really, really authentic? Like, when would you say something is really authentic?
It's a great question, because there's so many levels of awareness, right? And I think, to your point, even you pursuing bodybuilding was authentic to you at the time. And so you were living within the realm of your current state of conditioning and awareness. And so everybody is. So at some level, we could say every choice is authentic given the current perspective that somebody has. So the authenticity is itself, like life, a progression, it's an evolution. And I think that's, again, where we can have a lot more compassion and forgiveness to ourselves and others, that we're making choices to the best that we are aware within the realm of our current conditioning. And so I think authenticity beyond that, capital A, we could say that all human choices are authentic because you're doing the best you can. But I'm pointing more to a deeper authenticity, which is the ultimate form of commitment, I think, which is to knowing one's true nature, which is to awakening, which is
Hmm.
to moksha or liberation, right? It's not bodybuilding. It's not your wife or your husband. It's not your career. True authenticity to me is to discover the inherent qualities of my soul and the spirit that I am. That's a distinction. Small a authenticity, fine. Everyone, you could argue that even some of the most abhorrent and horrible things that happen around the world, where people are doing things that are criminal or abusive, you could say, well, that's authentic to that person's conditioning. And they would argue for it based on whatever they were raised within belief systems and religious tenets that justify their behavior. So I think my level of authenticity that I'm interested in is the capital A, which is to transcend the constraints of my humanity with which we all arrive, so that I can discover my true capital S self.
Yeah, and this is also something I was thinking about asking you, is this discovery of true nature, because you also talk a lot about the stage from the victim mentality, like life happens to me, to then
Yeah.
life happens for me, to be more in the manifesting realms. But when I went to my first Vipassana after a few days, for me, what I realized is life just happens. And the idea of me, like you said, like the true nature, like it's I don't know if you ever listened to this story. Sam Harris was talking about it when he talks about free will, that there was this story of that guy who shot many people with a sniper rifle on a roof, and then eventually killed himself. And when you just hear the story, he even killed kids. You think like, what a fucking psychopath that has to be to do that and then kill himself. But then they found like a letter of him saying that he was very sorry that he had to do that, but some voices in his head just said he has to do it, and it was absolutely impossible for him not to do it. He was
Yeah.
suffering, and they should almost like look what happened in his brain. He feels like something was wrong with him, and eventually they found out in a autopsy or a biopsy, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that he had like a tumor that was actually growing in that area, that could actually be responsible for those crazy voices that made him do that. And all of a sudden you realize this guy didn't had anything, he didn't want to do that. It was almost like a physical thing that grows into him and makes him do that. And all of a sudden you have compassion in a weird way for everybody, not just for the kids and the people he killed, but also for him. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just curious, what is your perspective on that? Because in a way, that's for me the acknowledgement of true nature, of like, oh, shit can just grow in my brain and make me do stuff I don't want, or I can actually become completely weird. And on the
Yeah.
other hand, that's exactly what we're talking about. This is the unknown. This is the
Yeah.
feeling of like we don't know what's happening next, right?
Correct. Yeah. And I would say it's slightly different than the unknown because it's sort of the known, even if you're not aware of it, right? Meaning it exists, right? I distinguish the known, like even I did a talk last night, similar to the one that you came, and I was telling people that no one is scared of the unknown. You can't be scared of the unknown. What you're scared of is what your brain is superimposing as a prediction, as a imagined outcome in the unknown, right? So that's what's actually creating the fear. It's very
Yeah,
subtle but important
yeah.
because at least it's more empowering because then you have some say over that, right? So,
Mhm.
but as I've said many times, even in this conversation, I'm all about compassion and forgiveness, which is we're all doing the best we can within the limits of our current awareness. So similar to your sniper story, um, it, it's obviously a hard story to hear and to have compassion for the perpetrator, in this case, this guy. But then when you discover, oh, okay, there was something going on biologically that was influencing him, then sure. But it doesn't, it's a subtle thing, right? Because there are things that people are doing all day, from sex trafficking to domestic abuse to stealing to, crime of all sorts of nature. And it doesn't condone it, but it does explain it if we understand people's conditioning. So there's still consequences of human behavior based on what we've all agreed upon in society as good, bad, or illegal or legal or whatever. And so that's where, yes, we can have compassion for someone's behavior, but I still believe in there being consequences of action, right? So someone, for example, last night was at my talk and they said they've gone to prison, they've done heroin, and there's certain things that he had done. So he happened to be a strong dude. He's obviously okay now, but someone else doing heroin, they may not have such a strong or robust constitution, and so they might die after a day or two, right? So there's nothing wrong, and we can have compassion for somebody who's sort of inflicting such self-abuse based on the fact that they were hated or their parents disowned them or they said you were a mistake or whatever it is that child went through that makes them feel so worthless that they're trying to escape their suffering, in this case through drugs. But we still have to understand in the realm of 3D reality, there's consequences to actions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's subtle. So both can be there. We can have compassion, but at the same time, there's a lot of things I don't condone
Yeah.
or agree with, right? So yes, that brings, especially to ourselves, because which human being can't look back on their history and have countless forms of judgment or criticism for what they did or didn't do? Oh, you should have done that. You shouldn't have done that. And people beat the shit out of themselves all day. And that often creates present time suffering because they haven't accepted their history. One of the things that I help people with is to really embrace and overcome and transcend your history by embodying the fact that, or the realization that you did the best you could at the time. Yes, now you might have, in hindsight, the awareness, the greater wisdom and intelligence and experience to go, well, that was stupid. Yeah, maybe, but that was 5 years ago and you didn't know any better. So, right now, you saying that was stupid is also stupid, right?
Yeah.
So you're perpetuating the limitation, right? So I think it all comes back down to, as I said, that capital A, which is the embodiment of our true self, which is going to have the characteristics of love, of kindness, of forgiveness, of acceptance. And that's what we're all working towards so that we can actually embrace our humanity, the humanity side being completely flawed and filled with very imperfect choices throughout our life.
When we talk about your work and the change you do, or like the change you create in people, do you think there is some sort of like, I don't want to call it like a recipe, but maybe some attribution of things that have to happen in a certain order? Because I feel, obviously, this is something about the coaching world. You never know. You never know really how sustainable or like how sustained is the change. I don't know if you know Ken Wilber, but he once talked about those 3 things. He says like wake up, clean up, and grow up. So the wake up, he describes as the spiritual journey of like non-attachment, realizing that there's this oneness. But he then also says like there's a lot of spiritual gurus and teachers who just woke up and then actually didn't go into the cleanup phase or never actually cleaned up their shit. So there's still all that subconscious stuff that makes them, like good example is Osho, that makes them do crazy stuff, right? And then the grow up is then the personal development, I'm learning skills, I'm actually becoming a functional human being in this real world and integrating my quote unquote spiritual nature and my healed, like cleanup could also be shadow work and stuff you do. So I know that you have a lot of the stuff you do has to do with waking up to your true nature. And somehow you're also talking about conditioning, but do you feel with the people you worked the most or long term, that there's a certain order that you follow? Is there some secret sauce you can share with us about transformation?
Sure. Yeah, and what comes to mind is, much of my study, I've been an Ayurveda practitioner for 20 plus years, right? And so in Ayurveda, which is sort of the healing lifestyle arm of yoga, sort of being the masculine component of that under the umbrella of Hinduism as a lifestyle, not so much a religion, but there's 3 buckets that sort of equate to Ken's, version, which is we first want to remove the root cause, whatever that is, that creates limitation and disease. Then we balance, clean up the effects of the previous root cause. And then the third stage is we create a new paradigm or grow up. So I do something very similar. It gets a little bit more into the weeds and nitty gritty with me because the root cause is a blind spot, right? So what I'm doing is bringing awareness to the wake up part, which is what you've seen in podcasts or even when you came to my live event and I worked with people, is to bring awareness to what is the root cause of their suffering. In this case, what I call a subconscious prison, right? The I'm not good enough, I'm not loved, I'm not safe, something. And so the first stage is actually what I call awareness, right? So you may not even wake up, but it's to bring awareness to what is the prison that I've been living in oftentimes for, 30, 40 years, depending on the age of somebody. Then the next stage would be to presence. What is it like to live in that world? Right? Like, and it's usually pretty self-evident. Like I'm exhausted, I'm isolated, I'm sad, I feel defeated, and all of these experiences. I'm sick because it can over time obviously cascade into the physiology. A dis-ease, as I tell people, is a precursor to disease. So we want to be able to see that so that they can go, holy shit, my life is really kind of tough and I've been suffering for a long time and it's impacted my relationships, my health, my wealth, all of that. Then I would ask people to investigate the validity of the constraint, right? Which is a fancy way of saying, is it really true that you're not good enough? Just because your dad said this, your brother was the academic, or your sister was the athlete, or whatever it is that made you feel somehow inadequate, does that mean it's an actual truth? Of course it's not. Okay, great. Then we get to see, in the absence of that truth, who would you be? How could you feel? And most people's response, hence my product, is I'd feel free. I'd feel light. I'd feel like I could do anything. That's now we're starting to dip into the grow up, which is the new paradigm. Okay, well, what would become available in your life if that's who you were and how you lived? Oh my gosh, I would fill in the blank of whatever that person now sees being possible. So, the 3 buckets break down into those more sort of 5 subtler steps, but it's really ultimately bringing awareness to the lies that we all have about our own humanity, which to me, as I said, I call these subconscious prisons, that by default, it's sort of the factory settings of a human brain we all have. No one's escaping them. Through maturity, adversity, maybe a little bit of therapy, sometimes people transcend them, but that's my work, is to reveal those, help people see that it's a lie, and then introduce them to the world on the other side of the lie, which is filled with, freedom, love, and possibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like your title, the Mind-Architekt,
Yeah.
a lot. By the way, did you come up with this, or did you have somebody who
I did.
branded
Yeah.
you? Yeah,
No, I came up with it.
yeah. Because that's basically what it is. It's like getting into the mind, looking at the space, and do you feel comfortable in this space? Is this? Should we maybe exchange some stuff? Should we maybe make it
Yep.
freshen it up a little bit?
Knock down a wall or two.
Open the window,
Yeah.
get some fresh air in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you use that process with yourself? Like, are you your own Mind-Architekt, or do you have somebody in your life that is your personal Mind-Architekt?
Great question. I'd say probably 80-20 myself, and then I get outside counsel wherever, whether it be, I've worked with so many people now helping my friends that even my friends become good at listening, or they're able to sort of delineate and point out maybe a little bit of a lie in language, which is really what I'm doing, right? People speak, we all do it. We say things to confirm a deeper sense of inadequacy, insecurity, or scarcity. So people will they have learned to listen to me quite accurately. I occasionally will work with I have a spiritual intuitive that I talk to sometimes who's pretty out there, and we have deep conversations. I've occasionally worked with a therapist, traditional therapist, not often. I've probably had half a dozen sessions throughout the course of my entire life. So most of it is self-reflection. What I'll often do as an exercise is, rather than be in my head, because when we're in our head thinking about what it is that we're struggling with, it's hard to create space and get away from it. So I'll write it down as though a client or a fan or someone is writing me their problem to me. I'll leave it then for a day or two, and then I'll come back and read it as though I'm mind architecting that person. And usually then it becomes self-evident what the limitation is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of a tricky situation sometimes for me, because there is obviously a limit to your own self-reflection. That's the only reason why
Yeah.
you talk with other people and go to a therapist or go to you and just want to have another opinion. But then on the other hand, I also, for example, I don't know if you know Rupert Spira. He's like a non-dual
Yeah,
teacher.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I like
I think
Rupert.
he's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. And one person once asked him if what he's teaching is not some sort of like spiritual bypassing. And he says like, yeah, basically we're bypassing all the shit. You know, like we're going straight to the source. We're just cutting out all the stuff between, and it brings you back into peace right away. And I found this to be very, very helpful, like the non-dual awareness and the teachings. But what I'm also sometimes questioning is exactly the cleanup phase. Isn't it, because it's almost like you don't need to deal with the problems anymore because you can just connect right back into it. So the self-reflection or the reflection through therapy is missing, and then you just repeat the shit again.
It's a great point, and I'm glad you bring it up. And it speaks to your mind and your practicality, which could be your German roots, or being more of a pitter, intelligent guy who can see all the patterns. But that's why I'm very particular when I help people, especially if they're doing one-on-one work with me, or in my mastermind working with me in a group. You know, the Ayurveda balance the effects. There's that second stage cleanup is imperative, because let's take a very obvious biological example. If someone's been an alcoholic for many years, and they realize that the root cause or the wake up is like, oh my gosh, I thought that I'm bad, as a person. My dad told me I'm an asshole. My mom told me she didn't want me. And I just think I'm a bad person. So I'm going to drink myself to death. That could be the root cause. Just because they realize it's not a truth. Oh, it's not bad. Maybe my parents were the most loving parents I could have had, but I'm not inherently bad. That's just a narrative. It's a dialogue that I, have about myself. And of course, it sucks to think about it and to believe it, but it's not a truth, right? That's the distinction. It's not a truth. It's a reality, but it's not a truth, is the way I let people. It's subtle, but that way they can have their reality. I'm not going to deny that, you feel bad. It's just not a truth. Anyway, the cleanup phase is imperative, because if this guy's been drinking for 20, 30 years, just because he realizes he's no longer bad, it's not a truth, and he stops drinking because he's not trying to get away from the suffering that's associated with that prison, he still has cirrhosis of the liver, and he still has lost all his money gambling away, or he's still divorced and doesn't have custody of his children because of the way he's been behaving. So there's a lot to take care of, right, in terms of rectifying his behaviors, apologizing, cleaning up his body, healing his liver, hopefully getting to spend some time with the kids again and apologize to the ex-wife. And right. So what I found is with my work that as soon as you step into this new realm, the grow up phase, or what I'm calling this new paradigm for existence, the new version of you, it becomes very self-evident what you need to do to take care of and clean up your shit, right? Because the new version, the new evolved, wise version of you on the other side of the constraint is somebody who by default is going to be more responsible. And when you have that newfound sense of responsibility, life isn't happening to me anymore, I'm not a victim, but it's happening through me and by me, then I have the power. And so I'm going to clean up and do my housekeeping. I mean, there's someone in my mastermind, it was so powerful, a woman who I worked with. And in the very next session, 2 weeks later, she came back on, because I always follow up with people that I specifically work with. And she said, after our call, I called every one of my ex-boyfriends and I apologized to let them know I was never actually in a relationship with them, because I was in a relationship with my own mind about how I thought I had to behave to keep them.
Wow.
Super powerful. Yeah, very wow, right? And so that, I didn't tell her to do that as an exercise. I told her maybe with one guy to clean it up and the way she'd behaved. But that became self-evident to her because of the new perspective that was in keeping with the new her that was on the other side of the wake up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm very, 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 I don't like to say I'm adamant. I don't tell people what to do. I'm not in the business of instruction, I'm in the business of inspiration, which is slightly different. But I have noticed almost categorically 100% that when somebody has a new set of eyes to look through on the other side of a prison that they were previously oblivious to, that they do have different thoughts, feelings, and they naturally take different actions that clean up the effects of their previous limitations.
Beautiful. Yeah, that goes also so a little bit hand in hand with what you said at the event, that we're always living in the constraints of our own mind, right? Because I feel in your example right now, there's always this the word karma. Somehow not everybody s- hears the same thing or understands the same thing, but karma is for me like this conditioning. It's almost like your nervous system is conditioned in a way, and for certain nervous systems, a certain result is completely possible and will happen. And for others, in that particular sense, it's programmed and conditioned. It's just not happening. It's like you can try whatever you want. It will always not work. And what you're now explaining is this woman calling all her ex-boyfriends. It almost sounds like she's somehow reconditioning her nervous system through that action, right? It's almost like she's putting the
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, that's exactly what's happening. I don't want to sound melodramatic or grandiose in the way that I work with people, but I'm literally giving birth to a new type of human being when I work with someone. It's not who they have been with new insight or information. It's no longer who they were because it's a new version of themselves, with which, I mean, the first thing I always see is the change in their vital signs, right? The first thing, especially when I'm in front of someone, is I see their breathing pattern change, right? So if we were to measure some of their biological markers, like their heart rate would drop, their blood pressure would drop, their respiratory rate would drop, because they're no longer in state of fight or flight, which is that survival mechanism based on some sort of threat response because they think they're not good enough or they're not loved. And so everything around them is being viewed through the lens of survival. As soon as that's dropped, they literally become quite biologically, physically, instantaneously a different person. Of course, they can remember their name. They know where they live. They're probably married to the same person, although some people change their mind pretty quickly. They realize that that has not been a healthy situation. But as it relates to their emotional body, their physiological body, their psychological awareness, they are stepping into a new iteration of themselves. It is the ultimate form of death whilst still being alive, which is why death is one of my favorite subjects, right? Because it is, in order, for me at least, when I work with people, in order to be the most self-actualized, self-realized, and self-fulfilled human being, that is incumbent upon you to consistently die to the current iteration of yourself that's based in limitation.
Yeah, man, it's beautiful how you pointed out, and it is so powerful. It's I wouldn't call it melodramatic. I would call it almost like just a very effective, and in a sense very powerful. Like you, and that's maybe another really interesting question for me personally. Also, like you have this power to change people, to almost like let them willfully die like their old
Yeah,
self.
yeah,
And you
yeah.
still have a private life, you still have friends, you still have people who maybe know you before you were the Mind-Architekt even. Uh, do you feel it's sometimes hard to be around people and just be yourself, like you want to call it your authentic self? Like how is it to be that everybody relates to you maybe also nowadays this way?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, do I find it hard? No, not at all. I mean, you've spent a little bit of time with me. You were at the live event. You can see that I'm, uh, as much as I can hold space, it's profound and powerful and literally, killing people in the most loving way and giving birth to a new version of themselves, which is not for the faint of heart, but it's incredibly profound to go through. You also saw that I'm a clown, that I love to have a good time, and that,
Are you,
one of
yeah,
the,
are you a
yeah.
stand-up comedian on the weekends?
Yeah, a couple of friends have asked me if I would.
You could. You definitely could.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah,
Did you ever do something to be funny, or are you just funny?
not that I'm aware of. Maybe made a bunch of fucking stupid mistakes in my life, but I had to laugh at myself. No, I think there is a certain degree of truth when they say there's a correlation between intelligence and comedy, right? And so I think it's the ability to discern, to watch human behavior, and then to sort of see the absolute ridiculous nature of
Yeah.
what it is that most of us do. So being hyper observant as I am, which allows me to pick up on the subtleties of language, body language, eye movement, facial gestures, so that I can see where somebody's stuck. Um, I think that's given me the opportunity to really pay attention to some of the asinine things that humans do and just make fun of it. So, nothing that I did. I didn't go to comedy school. I didn't study comedy as a bachelor's or anything. I guess I'm just blessed with a pretty good sense of humor. So, but to answer your question, that's who I tend to be with my friends, right? Is the clown, the jester, the guy who loves sports and to have good food and nice conversations, just like anybody else. I think one of the most funny questions or comments I get when, especially for example, I'm on a date or something, they're like, "Are you psychoanalyzing me now?" I'm like, "No, no, I'm just
Yeah,
enjoying my
exactly.
steak. I'm enjoying my steak. I mean, you seem pretty cool, but I'm not gonna I'm not gonna put that much effort into it just yet." So no, I mean, I can see things obviously, but I'm still very human, and I like that part of me, and um, it's something that I turn on more when someone is soliciting that kind of guidance, meaning whether it's a live event like you came to, I'm talking to a group, I'm giving a keynote to a company, or I'm working with a client one on one, then I sort of just turn up the dial on my perception of all of the different
Mhm.
idiosyncrasies they're displaying for me. Otherwise, I'm like, fuck it, let people, do whatever the hell they
Yeah.
want.
Yeah, but you can't fully turn it off, even when you're at the date, right? Like there's some sort of that hyper awareness that is still active somewhere, right?
Yes, to a certain degree, but it's I make a distinction early on in my life because when my parents died, it was just me, and so I realized that I became very vigilant, right? And even though I know this is your second language, you're obviously fluent enough to probably know the difference, but vigilance is very different to being observant. And so somebody who's vigilant is very observant, but from a perspective of fear and survival, right?
Mm.
So that's how I started. So I think much of the qualities of paying attention and the skills that I developed were early in my life where I was really looking at the world through my own lens of self preservation. And so I became hyper observant, but because I was trying to survive. Once I realized I didn't have to survive, I'd already developed the ability to see things that were very subtle that most people don't see. I just no longer was worried about my own, demise or if people were going to like me or so so there was a certain degree of conditioning that happened, I think then.
Yeah.
Um, but no, so yes, that's always there in terms of I'm observant, I'll notice people's gestures. The difference is in everyday life, I don't bring any kind of component of analysis or I don't try and rectify it for anybody unless they're asking.
Yeah, yeah, that's very important. That's a really nice thing you just said. That makes so much sense that you were hyper vigilant or vigilant, but still through the conditioning, even though the fear left you, because you could also think, oh, maybe as soon as the fear is gone, you lose your superpower because you don't need to do it anymore. But it's still something that your brain is has learned to somehow do. So it is almost like a superpower at some point.
It is, and I think it's really an extension. People are like, "How do you have such a great memory, dude? Like, you remember everything, all the people, da da da." And I'm like, really, everybody has a great memory. It's just what people lack is presence, right? Most people aren't where they are, and so they're not attending to what they're doing or what someone's saying, which is why also most people don't listen because most people are actually in their head worried about what happened last time they saw this person or worrying about what they're going to be doing tomorrow. And so when people hear that, they're like, "Oh my God, that kind of makes sense." I'm like, "Well, of course." It's like, if you're not where you are, then why would you fucking remember it? Right. So when people really can make the connection between presence and memory, so for me, the superpower is really associated with presence, just truly being where I am, both literally, physically, but also emotionally, energetically, and psychologically, so that I'm giving my full attention not only to what I'm doing, but who I'm with, which I think is the least you can do, especially if it's a human being that you say you care
Mhm.
about.
Yeah, and you're really good at calling people back into it too. So it's almost like you're mirroring them, and once they're like in their head, they're like, no, 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 come back here. So I think it's a mix also between the presence part and obviously the intelligence, the problem solving part, and also the humor. I think the humor has to do something with it too because it like I remember at the event you reached my edge with the last client, or with the last person who was talking with you. You reached my edge with the tough love. Like I feel like you were so
Hmm.
tough with her, with the woman who was talking for her friend, that at some point I was
Yeah.
like, oh my god, he's really going to town with her right now. And I was like, okay, maybe that's something I could be better at too. Maybe I could actually also be even more tough with my clients. But that's also something you really it's an interesting ping pong. Like you're very tough, but then you can also somehow give them the love shower again, in a nice proportion. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm glad that that maybe was a gift to you to be able to get to that edge for yourself, right? Because that's your growth opportunity. So the distinction I make there is it's all love, right? It's just the more modelly cuddling, and when I'm holding space for someone who's really struggling, is more what I'd say the maternal form, the feminine, the mother type love, right? Which is all embracing. It doesn't really matter. The kid could have broken something, fallen over, it's scuffed its knee, and it's like the mother's just dealing with holding the child, and it's okay. The tough love to me is more the paternal or the father or the masculine, right? It's like, okay, yeah, now that you're safe, right, which is what I establish energetically in the room, and certainly when I first start talking to someone, they know that I'm paying attention. I can usually repeat everything they say. They feel safe. That's the maternal, right? I've got you. But then if I'm going to actually help somebody, especially when the ego is really stubborn, it requires that I come in with more the analytical and the paternal, which is like, hey, you're full of shit. And if you want me to really help you, then you've got to realize that the words coming out of your mouth right now are disempowering and a disservice to what you say you want. And I'm a stand for what you want, not you pretending you can't have it, right? Just as one sort of conceptual example. And that's where people do respond, especially, it depends on the individual. But certainly when I work with my athletes, right? Their whole world is around discipline, dedication, and having to face adversity. So they really appreciate when I get in their face and say, like, there's just no time to feel sorry for yourself right now. You're being paid millions of dollars to perform. So pull your head out of your fucking ass and realize that you can do this, like as a very just, again, general way of dealing with somebody. So ultimately, yes, there can be some resistance to begin with, and people might feel a little bit offended, but I don't usually get that. Normally, what people hear is, holy shit, this guy cares more about me than I do. Mhm.
Shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe to come back once again to the big love topic, because you said you
Yeah.
sometimes you're in a date with a woman, and I'm actually curious because I feel I'm not on the newest up to date stand, because at the event somebody was talking about one of your last relationships, and that maybe it was the one you've mentioned. I'm just curious, since your last relationship, the one you mentioned where this woman left you, were you able to ever get that deep again with another woman? Is it still something you're personally struggling with?
No, and that, just to clarify, that last one where the woman left me was a long time ago. That's when I started my career. That was like
Hmm.
25 years ago.
Okay.
So, so that's just to make that accurate. And yes, absolutely, categorically, every relationship deeper and deeper and deeper. Why? Because I'm deeper, right? So it's when you realize that the frequency we embody based on hopefully the growth and evolution that we go through, which is the discovering my authentic capital A self, is going to then attract and equally reflect that in my
Hmm.
circumstances. So as I have continued to grow and evolve and develop even more awareness and wisdom, then I attract that in somebody else. The irony is, it might not be because of them, right? That same woman might have been just with a guy 2 months ago, being relatively immature or not particularly evolved, but their capacity and their potential to show up to meet me at my new frequency is there. It's just been dormant. So it's not like it was her per se, but she is reflecting as best as she can. Sometimes it can't be sustained, my new level of frequency and vibration. So it's always deeper because certainly for me, I'm always committed to growth. And so as long as I'm growing, expanding, and becoming more aligned with my true, authentic, inherent nature, then I won't be able to either attract or sustain anything that doesn't meet me there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is something because the reason I'm asking you that question is obviously because I'm in this process myself of like trying to analyze certain decisions I'm making or I've made. And what I'm just sometimes feeling is this commitment to growth is like, okay, there's this person and maybe there's something where she plateaus or we plateau, and then I'm going to move on to another relationship. And sometimes that feels like not like growth, but actually regression, because it's almost like I'm choosing the more simple system again from like a relationship system, like two people. I have to manage two people, like a space, to like, oh, I'm single again, and now I can actually grow myself again. And I'm starting to sometimes question if there's something I'm avoiding by just staying in this relationship and actually looking at what is the thing that could actually happen. It's almost like some politicians do that too with the way we should live, like instead of like oh, where we going is bad, the new world is bad, everything is going to shit, and that's why we should regress almost to like let's live back in tribes again, because that's so much more simple. Yeah, it is more simple, but it's still like almost like an avoidance of systemically at least grow.
Yeah. Well, I definitely don't want to compare you to politicians because I think you are far more evolved in that realm compared to certainly the leaders of the current world, who are seemingly very intent on destroying, society and killing people. So that's not I get what you're saying, but and I appreciate your willingness to look at yourself so transparently and vulnerably, right? Because it would be easy for you, good looking dude, you've got a presence, you've got a platform, to not have to admit these things and say, no, I'm just going to move on with my life and it's cool. So I admire and acknowledge, first of all, that you're willing to share that. I think the ultimate sort of peace of mind for you is it doesn't matter, right? And I don't mean that in a dismissive way. What it means is that, okay, you could say that going single is the easy way. I don't agree with that, because you might find that in 2 months of being single, you still have to face whatever it is that you're here to face, right? Okay, it might not be being brought up in a relationship, but you're still facing, oh, I'm 33, I'm 35, you're 40, whatever you get to. And it's like, what am I doing with my life, right? There's still going to be the discomfort and the itch that is the prison of the mind, whether it's being triggered by a partner or it's just being triggered by your own realization that you're not where you want to be. So that's where I tell people to give themselves a break, that one of my most famous quotes is that life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free. And so whether you're with someone, people, or you're just in a circumstance of life, you're going to be triggered where you're not free. So you can't lose, right? There are people who stay in marriages for 50 years because, well, that's what you do. That's what my parents did, and I would say they actually are growing less than somebody might go through the discomfort of ending a marriage, even with kids, after 20 years. And then they went through real heartbreak and sort of this rite of passage of spiritual growth for 3 years. And then they got remarried to somebody and realized, oh my gosh, I had no idea that I was not actually in a relationship for those 20 years, right? So who's actually doing more growth, right? So I think without dismissing people and circumstances, and in no way am I saying that people should just walk away from marriages easily, but oftentimes the real growth is actually having the courage to end a relationship, because oftentimes there's so much fear that is associated with that. What do my parents think? What do my friends think? How am I going to survive? Especially for a woman, right? If the man is the traditional breadwinner, it can be really scary for a woman to then have to venture out into the world by herself, not knowing how she's going to sustain, pay for a mortgage, et cetera, et cetera. So I think wherever there is fear, there is the opportunity for growth, regardless of whether you're with somebody or not. Ultimately, humans are sadly defined predominantly by fear. And so, honestly, it doesn't matter what you do. You still got to transcend it.
What are you afraid of right now?
It's a good question. I guess there isn't anything that's come to mind. No, I've really I mean, what my work is dedicated to transcending fear, and for that reason, sorry. Um, I think I've gone to most of the sort of deep corners of my subconscious to find it as best as I can, because for me, fear is the conduit to freedom, right? And I'm committed to
Mm-hmm.
freedom. So if I can find fear, then it's like, ooh, there's more freedom on the other side that's available. So for me, I don't have any fears that I'm aware of for myself. I
Mm-hmm.
think mine is more societal. I really care about humans. And so I think it's more a superimposed fear that I worry about how many people are suffering.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I would even sort of edit that and say it's not even a fear. It's just that I care. I just give a shit. I care. It's why what I do. And so I equally there. Why it doesn't manifest as a fear is because I also trust, to go back to your word, karma. Like I understand karma and that every soul has got to go through whatever it's got to go through. And sometimes it looks fucking disgusting and abhorrent and horrible what people have to go through. But I didn't come up with the rules of karma, and I don't know what that soul needs to experience. So who am I to judge, right? If I can intervene and if I can help, then of course I will. But there's so many things that are beyond the scope of my capacity to do anything. And so there's profound surrender that I have to have. So yeah, I mean, I'm living in the States, and there's a certain amount of concern, I wouldn't call it fear, about the gong show that is going on, and especially with the current administration and all of the lies,
Fuck.
corruption, manipulation, the weather, killing. It's insane. Like I never had used the word evil before the last few years with the whole scamdemic, and I just was like, wow, I guess I was a bit naive to the fact that there's some really dark fucking humans out there. And so even that, as is evident in my chuckle, I kind of had to laugh off. I do what I can. I bring awareness. I help people as best as I can. I certainly am outspoken about it, which, to whatever degree pisses some people off, certainly the people in power. But, I'm just like, look, I'm all about love, man. I'm all about like being
Yeah.
kind. I'm all about helping one another. I think 99.9% of the world's population are just humans who, sure, do people have prisons and constraints and fears? Yeah, but does that make them bad people? No. They're just trying to raise a family, make enough money to put food on the table, maybe go on vacation once or twice a year. But for the most part, people are good, and they're the people that I want to reach. And for the rest, I trust that love will prevail.
Mm. Yeah, I remember in my first Vipassana, after like a few days, there came this really weird realization um, about sadism for some reason. Like I felt a little sadistic part in me. I was like, oh wow, there's like something in me that I maybe got from my dad, because I feel like I got bullied by him when I was younger, and somehow I bullied. Like in Vipassana, basically what happens is all the shit comes up that you forgot, like through your subconscious. And at some point,
Yeah.
I had like this memories of like bullying a girl in school and bullying my sister. And I was like, what? Why the fuck did I do that? Why did I even enjoy it? Right. And then I was really asking myself, what's the evolutionary benefit of sadism? I
Yeah.
couldn't really, I
Yeah.
couldn't really like find it out. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Why are we
Yeah.
doing this?
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, did you ever come to a realization, or can I give you a reflection?
Pain, man. Hurt people. It's just like I had to
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I even now, obviously, I know that I am not like I feel like right now I feel very clean in my heart. Like I feel very open and tender. But like I said, I don't really know what I don't know, and maybe there's more to uncover. Yeah. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Beautiful. Beautiful. I think there's a couple of things, which is that in this realm, in this dimension, all frequencies exist, right? Meaning from the darkest to the light. And we have all of them within us, right? And it's sort of recognizing that without judgment, that, I've never been in a position where I've even been in a fight. And I went to a very competitive college, with a lot of great athletes, and you drink at the weekend, but I never even pushed a guy in a bar, pushed a guy in a bar or anything. And so, but do I have that capacity to kill or be killed, as a survival primal instinct? For sure. I had a dog who I adored, and if I'd ever seen anyone hurt my dog, I don't know what would have come out of me, right? So I think there's a certain amount of humility for us to all be able to realize that by design, deep in our DNA, we have fight or flight, and that could lead to some devastating actions, right? And so to kind of use that with sort of white gloves, and realize, okay, that, I do have that capacity. And for that reason, it also breeds compassion in others. You, for example, for sure, I use the term, there's the language we use and there's the language that uses us. So in this case, courtesy of you, we're using English. I could not have this conversation in German. But there is the language that uses us, right? So what did you learn as a language that uses you, the conditioning, the programming from your father bullying you, right? You learned that, first of all, well, that's okay. Secondly, maybe you thought it was an expression of love. You probably for sure thought it was an expression of value or power. And so for most people, but especially men, which is sad to say, over the last 200, 300, 400 plus years, women have been abused, right? And that is one way that men stay or try to assert dominance, which is really control, which is a reflection of fear at a deeper level, because somebody who's not living in fear doesn't need to dominate others. They actually have way more power. So those things are all at play, I would say, with you doing whatever with a girl at school or your sister, was that you were programmed through no fault of your own karma to realize, oh, I want to feel good about myself. And one of the ways I feel good is if I can dominate others. Ultimately, all it comes back to is that you get to be right about the way you view the world. And that's the ego. People will do whatever they have to do to be right. It is the primordial imperative of every individual, is even if they're sabotaging their life, see, I knew I could fuck it up. It's like, wait, you're being right about ending something that was really great for you.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy. Maybe to elaborate on that, was there something existential, or maybe that's the wrong word, something very deep that you've changed your mind in the last few years?
Very deep in terms of my view of myself, life, both, all the above. What?
World, life, just something where you were like, oh fuck, I actually have to change my mind about that. I felt almost like, yeah, like you just said, like I was right, but maybe for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of putting it. Right, for the wrong reason. Yeah, I think there were, I mean, to not get into too much politics, I was never naive to the thought that the people in power were philanthropists and that they really cared about humanity. I never was that dumb. Um, I don't think I'd realized to the extent that the people in power were actually, as I said just a few minutes ago, were actually really evil. There's what we could say unconscious actions that create harm, right? People who, like you look back and you're like, well, I didn't actually want to beat the shit out of my sister or be mean. So, but nonetheless, you did it, right? So it's sort of an unconscious action based on conditioning. And so what I've realized now is looking around, there's actually conscious intention to do harm, right? That people are knowingly trafficking children, abusing women. And so that's the part where I kind of had to wake up a little bit. I wouldn't even say it was naive, but it was maybe like we turn a blind eye, right? Sometimes it's like I'm a very sensitive guy, I'm a very loving guy. And so the thought of humans out there who are literally raping, molesting children and beating the shit out of women, it's kind of hard, it's hard to really be able to look at as a human being and take some ownership, however small. Like I've never done that. I've never even pushed a dude, as I said. I'm a hopeless romantic. But I think that's where I was like, okay, all right, this is kind of what we're dealing with in this dimension. And there's some really heinous stuff that goes on. And I personally am a stand to do whatever I can to help end that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the thing. Like sadism is not just doing something bad. It's like enjoying it, right? It's like actually having
Yeah.
fun
Yeah.
doing it.
Pleasure.
It's almost like a cat,
Yeah.
like playing with a mouse. She's not hungry. She doesn't want to eat the mouse, but she wants to somehow like torture the mouse. It's crazy shit. It's like wow.
Yeah. And again, I think it comes back to that identity that is based fundamentally in adequacy, not knowing its true nature. um, and thinking that it garners power and worth and value by having control over something or someone else. And it's ultimately based in scarcity and lack, right? Because if I have to try and control another or dominate another, then I'm not aware of my own abundant nature.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
have a few more wrap-up questions, like short
Okay, let's
questions.
do that. Yeah.
There can be a long answer or a short answer, depending on what you
Okay.
prefer.
Okay.
So what I hear a lot, and even in this podcast, you talk a lot about freedom, like me, like we're both like very big freedom lovers, and you talk about the freedom of suffering, the freedom from fear, right? The freedom from lack. And to maybe turn this into a question, what are you free for?
What am I free for? Meaning, what is the purpose of my freedom?
Yeah, like what do you choose to do with the freedom? Once you basically are free from fear and free from all the constraints, what is the thing you're like what do you do with it now?
Live an extraordinary life, live a life of love and pure possibility, be open to all of the gifts that it is to be human.
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah, for me, I realized that synonymous with breaking free, right? If you look at it actually as an analogy of somebody literally stepping out of a prison cell that they've been in behind bars and concrete walls, we could say the first experience is freedom. But then with that, to me, there are two distinct experiences that are accompanying that, which is a newfound love for life, right? Oh, there's joy, a sense of vitality because I'm now free. And then with that, there's simultaneously, as it relates to the view of the future, is a sense of pure possibility. And I can't think of two greater mediums for humans to traffic in than love and possibility. So you have to break free before you can access them.
Okay, possibility. What kind of possibility are you seeing in your life? Like what do you see as like what is in front of your eye, basically?
For me, well, first of all, the catch-all is everything,
But
right?
everything is
So
nothing.
true. Yeah, everything is nothing and nothing is everything. And so that is pure possibility. What that allows me to tap into is, I think, one of the greatest joys that we can experience as a human being, which is to create, to make up,
Mhm.
to abracadabra, to use the magic of my voice to, as I speak, so I create. And so, specifically for me, if that's what the question is pointing to, it is to create a world that is sufficiently inspiring to realize, a new type of human being who no longer lives in a world of limitation, suffering, fear, and disease. That's what I see being possible. And rather to give life to and the opportunity for humans to live in the world that I'm committed to, which is freedom, love, possibility, and vitality.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have discovered you 5, 6 years ago, and we had a quick, almost met up like 3, 4 years ago when you were living in Santa Barbara. And back then, your content and the things you were doing was way smaller than what you're doing now. So I feel when I look at you, what you just said, what I can say is like because being free for means I'm basically constraining my life from the unlimited possibilities to a few things that I'm actually taking responsibility for, and like seeing your team working with you,
Yeah.
seeing the stuff you're creating in Santa Monica, seeing the masterminds you do, where even friends of mine participate in and are very happy with your work. I'm just seeing, oh, okay, so this is where you're using your freedom to do that. So now I can actually see the almost like your values and your purpose behind it. It's nice. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. So we could go full circle back to the idea of, you know, uncertainty and commitment, right? So what am I? I'm free. And what are you free for? Well, that's my commitment.
Exactly, exactly, yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was asking for. Yeah, nice, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so I already said it in my own behalf, but I'm saying it for you as well. You don't know what you don't know. And with that knowledge that you don't know what you don't know, if you would have to guess something that is out there, like a school of knowledge, a philosophy, a technique, anything, something that you could learn, what do you think could be that one thing that could 10x your work and your purpose and your commitment to the change you're wanting to see in the world?
I mean, teleportation would be helpful, as opposed to sitting in a metal tube with a bunch of humans breathing recycled air and eating shitty food. Um, so I don't know if that technology is around the corner. Um, I mean, obviously, the world of longevity and biohacking is one of my passions. Health optimization, I love. So I think there's certain things on the horizon, and many of them already in place that will help us to live, to 120, 150. That would help me in my purpose, my commitment within the realm of freedom. I do what I can with the toys that I have. And I think
Hmm.
really one of the most powerful tools I have that helps other people as it relates to their health is uh, freeing one's mind, to me, is a precursor to true vitality. So I think I've got that going for me at least. Yeah, so they would be the two main things, is the ability to be anywhere at any time, courtesy of overcoming the paradigms of time and space, and then maintaining this three-dimensional vehicle in pristine condition so that I can keep reaching more people.
Hmm. Nice. Next question. Um, what is a thing you only do for fun that most people that know you or are around you would consider a waste of time?
Oh, as a waste of time. I was going to say I do a lot of things for fun, but I don't think any of them are a waste of time. I
For
don't.
other
I don't think
people.
I. For other people. Yeah, for
Yeah,
other
like
people,
like other
golf.
people would say, like, why is he doing that? Like, that's such a waste of time. But for
Right.
you, it's like amazing.
Yeah, so golf might be a waste of time for people, which I haven't played for a while because it's not that a waste of time. I just don't seem to dedicate the time to it right now. For fun, though, yeah, I mean, look, just goofing off, if I'm on a date or, yeah, but I don't know. I love these things, like I want to live, I want to explore. I mean, I recently spent quite a bit of time with someone and was neglecting some of my other priorities to do with work, and so that could be seen as a waste of time, but we had a blast, so who cares? Um, yeah, but most of my fun is I work out, I play tennis, occasionally I'll hit golf balls, and, yeah, otherwise I'm pretty damn committed to what I do, it's a sort of 99% of my day.
Yeah. Did you ever try to play paddle tennis?
I haven't yet. I might be the only human being who's never played.
It's amazing. That's why I'm here in Mallorca right now. I'm here to learn to play paddle better. Like they have crazy courts and coaches here. So
Oh, wow, I didn't know
it's
that. I have
yeah.
a friend, I travel between different places, and a friend of mine, whenever I'm in LA, he wants me to play paddle. So I'm like, okay, but we still haven't gotten around to it. But I'm a purist, I'm a traditionalist, so I love my tennis. But I also love ping pong. There you go. Ping pong might be a waste of time. People are like, but to me, it's
Yeah.
actually an amazing longevity tool because of the reaction time. It's great for cognitive health and mental health.
Mhm.
I used to actually take lessons with somebody pretty much once every 2 weeks or so. So I love ping pong, but I feel like paddle tennis is sort of a hybrid between ping pong and tennis. So I probably will love it.
What do you think about chess?
I love chess. I know how to play, but if I was with anyone who was semi decent, they would kick my ass because I know the rules, but I prefer backgammon. Backgammon, I
Backgammon.
can hold my own. Yeah, I'm good at
Okay.
backgammon. Chess, I need to get some help and definitely a lot of practice.
Yeah, yeah. All right, man. Last and final question. Um,
Okay.
it's a very for me it's a very challenging question because I can like think about it a lot, but I always like to ask it. So, what is something that is really true for you where you feel like, yeah, this is something I figured out in my life and I can say this is true, that's right for me, that most people would completely disagree with?
I don't know, because I'm pretty outspoken, right? So I think I've declared most of my truth. So I think even if there were people who disagreed, they've dropped by the wayside. um, what is true for me that most people would disagree with? I don't know if I have anything like that. I don't want to dismiss the question, but do you have an example? Like, what was your answer to your own question?
Like something I've realized in my life, and I wouldn't say this is the best answer right now, but it's just the first thing that comes to my mind. So there's some people, they always say like you can learn something from everybody, and
Yeah.
this sounds like such a humble, nice thing to say, and everybody would agree with this. And I think like no, I think you could probably learn something from everybody, but if I look at my limited lifetime and how many people I can actually interact with, there's definitely a better choice to learn from certain people than from others. So I still would consider myself very selective with who I'm spending my time with, and not just say like, yeah, you can learn from everybody, and that's why I'm always open to receive whatever is close to me. Yeah, yeah.
I get it. So I guess one of the things I actually teach in my mastermind is humans, still a lot of humans, and I don't know if it's most to answer your question, like most humans would disagree, because of the way the brain's designed and people not understanding time. A lot of people say, well, you could have done something else or you should have done something else as it relates to a mistake or something they did. And that to me is a categoric lie. So my truth is no, you couldn't have done anything else. And it's one of my quotes, right? What happened happened and couldn't have happened any other way because it didn't. And when people really understand that, it really helps people to not only let go of, but also more profoundly accept their past. So that would be my final answer, is that I know the truth is things could not be different at any moment because they're not. And yet mentally, psychologically, and emotionally, a lot of people will still say, I should have done something different or I could have done something different. No, you couldn't.
Thank you for this conversation, Peter. It was a pleasure.
Likewise, my friend. Thank you for hanging tough with me and being patient. And we made it happen. And I really hope this makes a difference. And um, if people are, I don't know if I'm sure you have it at the end, but if people want to learn more, they can obviously find me at petercrone.com on my website, or at Peter Crone for Instagram. And if they want to even go deeper and study some of my work, I've got 80 plus hours of content in a very affordable membership, my freedom membership, and it's just $29 a month. So we wanted to make it really available for everybody.
I will definitely put everything in the show notes so people can check it out.
Amazing.
Thank you.